Hello FTM Transtastic, it is Saturday. And I am Val, and this week we are talking about trans youth, or more specifically trans teens, because I think that's what we're supposed to focus on. And this week's topic is brought to you by our first guest week of the FTM Transtastic Perks, so I'd like to thank our guest Pax for kicking this whole thing off, and I'll now start talking about trans teens. So myself, being 20 years old, if you watch any of my videos that were made a year or more ago, then you're watching the experience of a trans teen. So one question that Chase asked in his video is it ever too young to transition? And he said no, and I agree with him. However, I do think that somebody can be transitioning too early. Transitioning too early has very little to do with age, except for the fact that I feel like this concept needs to be understood even more by young people and teenagers specifically, because like every single one of them is going through an identity crisis. Because we all tried to find ourselves as teens. And apparently you'll try and find yourselves again in like your mid-40s, I don't know. There's this option that's becoming more and more accessible to trans people called informed consent. And what this means is you can basically go anywhere and ask for hormones or surgery or whatever, and they can give it to you as long as you sign off on it and say that you're down for whatever the outcome is. And this is a really great thing for a lot of people. People are in control of their bodies, they're in control of their choices, they're not asking for a doctor's permission to do stuff that's really going to help them survive. However, every once in a while there are people who jump into that way too early, whether they're 10 years old or whether they're 50 years old. They haven't completely figured themselves out yet. They think they found the solution, and then they do this life-changing transition and it's a mistake. And if they're an independent adult, that mistake is their own, and there might be a lot of pain and struggling. However, it's their mistake to deal with. It affects you. When you're a teenager or younger, you have all these people in your life who feel like they're responsible for your happiness and responsible for making sure that pure innocent children aren't enabled to ruin their own lives. Supported by this idea that young people can't actually make decisions for themselves. And while they definitely can, I made this decision when I was 15. Clearly I'm sticking to it. Teenagers do make an awful lot of irrational decisions when they're trying to figure themselves out. A lot of them can be reduced to being called phases. We've all had them, we've all had phases, and most of them probably occurred when we were teenagers or younger. We find all kinds of hobbies and styles and labels and causes that we think are going to be really integral to our identity, that we're going to get really passionate about as teens, and then it kind of just is completely irrelevant later. Some of these phases will last like a day, some will last a week, some will last a couple months, some might even last a couple years, but like at some point a lot of these things are just like, wow, that was really a weird thing that I went through. Let's not even look at pictures from that time. I mean, I was very passionate about it, and I shared the Kony 2012 video, so that until of course he started screaming and masturbating on a public sidewalk. But what I'm trying to say here is not that everything that you ever do when you're a teen is a phase, because that is completely untrue. Some of the most important identity developing years of your life are in that stage, probably because you're trying so hard to do exactly that. But what I'm trying to say is if you do find something that you really think fits you and that's really going to be important to your life and really improve the quality of it and everything else, whatever you think it is, you really need to give it a shot before you jump into something irreversible. I know Chase said something about how a lot of people don't want to come out until right before they're starting testosterone. I think that's a really bad idea, especially if you're a young person. Now, when I eventually did get hormones, I was about 18, and I did not stay in therapy for long. It was probably about 3 visits with the same therapist, and then she prescribed me tea. But hopefully, I'm hoping she only did this because I walked in there and she was like, all right, let's do a psychological evaluation. And I was just like, I've been living as male for about 3 years, just like, please God, somebody give me testosterone. That was convincing enough for her, and for me, obviously, that's 3 years of my life that I've dedicated to making sure that this is the path that I want to go down. And I think everybody needs at least some time frame of doing that. They need to have people using the right pronouns. They need to have people referring to them in the right way, thinking of them in the right way, using the right name. They need to be wearing the clothes that they want to be. They need to have the haircut they want to have. They need to live that life before they medically transition, or else, it could be really bad for you. Living as a new gender, let alone living as a trans person, is not what you expect. Even, no matter what you expect. You can expect a bunch of hardships, you can expect, rainbows and butterflies. No matter what you expect, it's gonna be different. And you need to live as that person, and then you need to figure out if it's worth it and if it really was what you wanted and what you intended your life to be. There are plenty of older people and younger people alike who don't follow this advice, and they don't tell anybody, and they transition, and then they tell people, or then they figure out what it's like to live as a trans person or as a man or as a woman, and it's worked out for them. And I'm not saying that this is if you ever do this, it's gonna totally blow up in your face, but I think it's really important. This is just something that I think is really important. So to all trans youth and trans teens, what I want to tell you is that, especially if you don't have access to something like informed consent, don't have parents that are willing to, support your transition right now, the best thing that you can do with these years that you have where you're kind of at a standstill is to actually try and live this life and come out to people and get them using the right name and pronouns and figure out what it's going to be like, and at least, show people that you are serious and that long term, this is something that works for you. Because no matter what age you are, if you decide all at once, people are going to be very nervous for you and they're going to be very skeptical of you, and that's their problem at the same time, but it can make it easier for you if you do kind of take this as a process and don't jump on it all at once. Anyway, I feel like this video probably is going to end up being long, so I'm going to end it. Thank you, Pax, for the topic, and goodbye.